I'm a regular now. I know all these things. I know all the little rules. I'm talking to regulars. I have regulars in my chat. I'm back. I'm back. Yeah, I'm excited. We're gonna be doing some Lex versus the best cash games. It is amazing. This is amazing. I feel really good doing this. Should I just roll fucking everything? I mean, oh shit, I have to change my bet slider for the cash. How many binds are risking today? 2 max. Oh, nice. Nice, nice, nice. Ace Jack. Never in doubt. We draw below 2000. Yeah, you can auto rebuy, which is what I did. What resource would you recommend for new players on one of their HIGHSTAKES cash games? BBC. I think I need a diamond here. He has more 3x because I missed a lot of suited 3x block and I have no offsuit 3s. So it's different than in tournaments, right? In tournaments, I have a more beefy range there. Let's do a little overbet. I think. I don't know. I don't think that scripting is disallowed or anything, but I don't have any updates. It's quite nice. I don't really know what to do. He has so many more flushes than I do. I feel like if I'm bet, I'm capped as well. There you go. That's too bad. Fuck. Because if he checks, right? If I check the stern back, then I'm gonna be capped to a non-spade king straight. And that's a huge problem if I bet, because then if I bet 200, he's just gonna put in 2000 because he has a range advantage. Or he could do that, you know. No flatting from the cutoff. You guys remember that from last week? I do. And I needed a lot of stability back then. So I decided to just grind elites. Yes, very preferred flop. Okay, we will be shipper to hipping this for the full fucking 1574.74. Okay. Good pot. Might be the biggest pot I've won so far on 10-20. Juicy. I really wonder if I raise anywhere at that hand. There's a big chance I have to raise the flop. Probably I would say that if we look at our hand here, I think that we raise under the gun. I think that if he bets 80, I think that we have some, probably we might, in position may be hard, but there's a chance we have some raises with like 5-6 suited, 7-6 suited, those sort of hands. That's what happens in tournaments. When you call a 3-bet out of position and the flop is like ace-5-7, you have 7-8, then that's a candidate to check raise. Because it's the bottom of your pair range, right? I'm a regular now. I know all these things. I know all the little rules. I'm talking to regulars. I have regulars in my chat. I'm back. I'm back. Okay. Having spades is good unless the turn is not a spade, and all of a sudden it's bad. Because then you block his misses that he bets on the flop. We're gonna continue, of course, just saying what's going through my head. Probably 25%, or should we just go 50%? Interesting. I never would have thought that was a check on the turn. If that's a check on the turn, then our hand's probably a 25% bet, I think. Just judging from his check back. That's super interesting. I never would have thought that king queen checks there. Yeah. Let's save this one. I want to see if this just defends every suited ace. Probably. Alright, it's good flop. Again, it's uncapped though. It's important to realize that in any spot. It's bad. He does have, well, he has, you know, broadways with diamonds, so the queen is not a great card. Wow, so in position does bet less than 50% sometimes. He also has flushes, of course, because he needs to check back flush draws on the flop as well. I don't know. I guess that one I definitely could have randomized, by the way, as well. How are we doing? I think we're stuck like 200 or something. 200s. This guy's an unknown. Oh my god, post a big blind under the gun. Okay. So I only want to play one table, so I'm going to leave the other one now. Alright, so this is a good table. I mean, I'm already giving a lot of action in these games, so I'd very much like to play easier games when I can. If I can play a game with like one other fucking recreational in it. I don't want to table hop too much, so if this game dies, then this one might die if I'm not there, but then I guess we can just start a new one. I don't know if I should bet this in position ever, but... Croc D might be me. I think my big bet on the flop kind of fucked me there. My big bet on the flop fucked me. You see, I should have bet 50% there, I think, because then I bet twice. In my head, I made ranges too narrow by betting. I do block a lot of his floats as well, I guess. Did I have the ace of a... Yeah, I mean, probably. I'm gonna flat here. just because I don't want to... I should not be flatting, but I think it's okay because of the table layout. Nice. God fucking damn it. Let's see. You see, this is a problem. I have to check the turn. If I check the turn, I'm capped. So he can just blast at this, and I always have to fold. So, well, I don't always have to fold, but I guess on the diamond runouts, I lost to a boat. Check down. Let's see. Do I just shove? I mean, I think so. This is a very interesting hand. I think I have to go all in. Let's hope he didn't flat a higher pair. That's, you know. Hey! Boom, 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 boom. Ooh, nice. I got a heartbeat going. Amazing. God. Fucking awesome, mate. This is the best decision ever to mix cash in. God, this is so fun. And not just because I won the pot. I was saying it before that too, right? It's important. You gotta be fucking joking me. I think I'm gonna have to call when he shoves. Oh my god, mates. He had a pure gutter. I'm so happy he didn't shove though, but this is a pretty vile run out, to be honest with you. Ay, ay, ay. Hey, whatever happens, guys, if there is one person that's sort of like giving action in these games, I want you guys to be respectful about it, okay? Because these regulars could also be talking about me the same way. Okay. I was gonna roll it. I rolled a 17. I don't know if I should bluff catch there, but I think with 8s, it's not high enough up in my range to where it's an auto call. I wanna be aware of that, right? Because that's what I did last week. And I folded too high in my range. Let's just start random. 95, look at that. It's a bit of a problem with 10-4-4, right? I'm gonna have to check most turns, so I'm gonna get lots of big bets, but I don't have to. I don't get his check on the turn. On the river with the straight. Yeah, but that's okay. Don't always have to get it. Me neither. I have a hand here as well. Alright, we go. It's 10. That's fucking good. No. God damn it. Bottom 2 pair. Jesus Christ. Man, this guy's my fucking kryptonite. It really sucks to chop ace king versus ace 10. Especially because this is so brutal, right? The first run is gone. Oh, you can't see percentages and run it twice. So he already missed a 10, so he has 2 outs left for the second run. If I hit a king there and it just runs out blank, then it's a different story. But the fact that he already hit a 10 makes it a bit more painful. If I talk about a certain situation here, I'll talk about this big blind versus hijack spot. They might think, and I'm giving my whole fucking spiel on this situation. They might take like 3 or 4 mistakes from that and just say, okay, this is bad, that's bad, you know. That's a pretty crazy disadvantage. It's insane. Diamond's great. It would be bad less good to bet a spade here. Hands like ace jack of spades, ace queen of spades, queen nine of spades. Okay, I'm gonna give up now. Blocking this one, betting with it's not so great. If the river's a club, then I can smash it, but I think I need to give up here. It's funny though, I don't even know if check raising the ace blocker, the club blocker is good there. It does set me up for some cool bluffs, I think. Maybe I need to set this bet up from the flop. Good river for me. You have to mix up your thought process. Yeah, I have to balance that too. Balance my strategy and the way I talk about situations. Wait, let me put his hands. It's nice as the 3 of spades, because when I hit a 3, I make the effective nuts. Obviously, pretty rough runouts. Either hits him or he gets a really good bluffing opportunity. Really sucks. A call here, of course. I think it's... If we think in terms of what his range is... Okay, just call this. Man. That's too bad. Not running so good in the all-ins. Does BBC make an appearance later? Yeah, we have coaching at 3 or 2 this time actually. That sucks. Yeah, I see a minus 3k now. It kind of blows because I have 4k stop loss. Sucks, you know. We chopped ace king versus ace 10 and then we lost that one. Queens is a terrible hand to see. Obviously, he's going to shove some kings and aces and stuff as well. Alright, since we are close to stop loss, I'm going to continue with the easiest table. I think that's the wise thing to do. Oh, I could have opened that actually. I don't want to run. I mean, it's just one session, right? But I see all NAV is 1,000. We're minus 3. Just sucks because we're playing like way higher than we normally play, right? On 50 cents, $1, I wouldn't really give a fuck because we're just gonna grind. But since we're playing with a stop loss, this is actually these stakes I do not want to. This is these stakes I do not want to run below EV on, you know. 230? Wow. Look at me. Did you just read out your own sheet and say so true? It could have been, yeah. Okay, so I have to false 40% here. Yeah, I think I just roll this one, right? I think I just have to roll this one. A 3. Are you kidding me? Okay, I guess that's okay. I feel like the 2.5x. Oh god. Nice. Nice. Wow, that turn race really fucked me. That was pretty good by him. Pretty rough in terms of runouts. That's nice. I don't think we call much with like, I just want to see like what would the bottom, like how would I construct a check raising range, right? I could have some suited connectors here, I guess. Jesus fucking Christ. You see that, like this sort of stuff. No C-bet, no turn bet from anybody. It's a bit rough. That's what I mean. Lamborghini, hi. Okay, so let's think of like what's the top of our range, right? We have 10x suited. So, but also like ace 10, king 10, queen 10, jack 10, right? Those they don't 4-bet. Ace 10 suited might 4-bet actually, but or king 10 suited actually. I don't know, but we're gonna call here. There's no other decision. Holy shit. Yeah. Rough session. Rough session. Runouts just been horrible. What a runouts. Meh. Feel a bit bad about this session just because of the hands and the pre-flop all-ins didn't work. It kind of sucks, but it's gonna happen, right? It's such gonna be so small sample, but it's still, it makes me think like fuck, you know. Last week we lose queens versus kings to kind of put our session at minus 3k, and now we have like the really bad runouts. So it gives me a little bit of a bittersweet. Like I'm having fun, but it's like, oh come on. Like I don't want this segment to start minus like fucking 15k, you know, the first 3 times. So that's kind of what's going through your head. Saddle sucks a little bit, to be honest. Alright, I'm gonna stick to stop losses. This is very important. Anyway, this is the results. Full disclosure. So minus 4.5k, minus 2800, all NEV, but you know, we had those runouts just didn't really help today.
Hey man, what's going on? How you doing?
Yeah, good. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
I just played a pretty wild session. Well, wild as in played a lot more big pots this time.
Okay. How'd it go?
Well, I hit my stop loss and I had to quit.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Nice. All right. So I did want to just do a brief introduction of who I am, just because we probably have some people that don't know who I am very well. So I'm Lex's MTT coach, BBZ. I run BBZ Poker, and I'm not a cash game specialist, but you know, I think I have a a decent, theoretical understanding of how the game works, and I can help show Lex where things are going wrong in cash games, even though I don't specialize in the format. So that's kind of why I'm here, just trying to help him out, to be honest with you. I'm not trying to, it's really about anything else. And yeah, so with that, we can just kind of jump right into it. The first thing that stands out to me when I'm looking at what's happened is that, well, there are two things. One, we still can't do statistical work, which I think is, we have 469 hands played. So trying to do statistical work off of this sample is not a thing. So we're not going to waste time with that. But you are running like shit, which I think is like, that's one of the things that when you're playing, doing something that you don't normally do and it's not going well, you're kind of like, what, I'm getting smashed. Like, what the fuck, right? Like that's just one of, it would be natural to feel this way. But you're not losing for like 64 big blinds per 100. If you're losing, I would assume that as we jump into 10-20, we're losing at the onset.
Yeah.
But we're probably losing for like 6 big blinds per 100, maybe 7. That would be a lot, by the way. Like I'm saying that if we're getting crushed, we're losing for like 6 or 7. We're not losing for like 64. So you're running like real bad. Yeah. I do think that, like, especially for your audience, right? Because they don't understand. Like some of them aren't pros, right? They're just like, they love you. So they're just like, they love you. They see you getting crushed and like, why are you doing this? Stop.
Yeah.
But like, you're running like really salty. So I'm just going to look at the biggest losses, which I think, for some people will be fun, and for other people, like, can't we look at his biggest wins? But I just want to kind of run through some of these pots where you had some of your biggest losses and see if we can identify some strategy adjustments that would have prevented some of these failures. That's basically what I want to do. Does that work for you, or do you want to do something else?
No, 100%, man.
Cool. All right, let's get started then. So first button cutoff. Is this pure for us? What are you doing? Are you mixing and using a randomizer?
I think I mix most stuff button first cutoff. Well, I mean, there's some pure 3-bets obviously, and some hands I just play well as flats, maybe some like ace jack suited, but I think that everything that's like pairs and suited connectors, I'm definitely mixing to an extent.
That sounds good. So this is just not pure 3-bet, it's a mix. So I wanted to make sure that that's where we were at, roughly speaking. I'm going to probably jump into some tools at some point, but I'm going to try to freestyle some of this just because I don't want this to be too solver heavy. Yeah. All right. We get 4-bet. Now what are you thinking?
We just pure call. Anything suited really that we 3-bet here, we call a 4-bet.
Anything suited that we 3-bet here, we call a 4-bet. Did you check this spot already? No. Okay. I don't think so. It was just the way how confident you are. I was like, damn, maybe he knows something I don't know. Maybe just look this up. In cash games, you're 3-betting with a linear 3-bet range. I mean, like, especially as we get behind the button. So when you get behind the button, you don't flat much, right? So if you're like looking at cutoff versus MP, or like, MP versus UTG, or cutoff versus UTG, or small blind versus those positions, we 3-bet linearly. So we 3-bet with good hands. We don't really 3-bet with a polarized range that has trash in it. So you can't fold versus, like, your fold percentage won't be high enough if you don't defold hands kind of like this one. So this hand's a mix, personally. I mean, like, I would not assume this hand is pure fold, but this hand is getting to like towards high frequency fold. I generally speaking fold the suited 9s. In a situation like this, and I'm trying. So like there's a lot of, that would be like a lot of fold, right? So
because also he hands that come up as 4-bets quite a bit is like ace 10 suited, king 10 suited, king 9 suited, those sort of hands. So I'm blocking some of their 4-bet bluffs, or is that the reason?
9-8 suited is pure fold, 10-8 suited. Here the suited 8s are pure fold, but a lot of the suited 9s are folding. So like here it's king 9 suited is mixing, queen 9 suited is mixing, jack 9 suited is mixing. It does have 10-9 suited as a purely weighted call. So it's a call. In this rake structure, it would have been a call. Let me see. This is just like, we have to consult like various rake structures, I think, before we kind of, it looks like it's a call. So suited 9s, like I said, though, are like, you don't want to defend everything suited, right?
Yeah.
So suited 8s are definitely folds. Queen 9 suited is pure fold. King 9 suited is mixing. So I saw a suited 9, and that's the way that I remember it, by the way. That's why I said that. So when I saw the suited 9, I was like, I don't know if this is going to be pure call. I would have mixed. But it looks like this one in particular is a call. Okay. It's a good flop.
Yeah, I thought so.
It's an interesting answer. It's annoying. What are you thinking when you play this hand?
Yeah, I mean, I just don't see myself folding. I mean, you know, almost like one of worst case scenarios. I don't think he's shoving jacks and tens. I don't think he comes up with this answer. I think he'll have like a small bet bucket perhaps for some of his bluffs and like misses, and then he'll have a big bet bucket, and I don't think he puts sets in there. So against worst case queens, I'll have like 30%, and then anything else, I'm just doing really well. I think that he has ace king and ace queen in his range just fine, and I smash those. So like I just don't really see how I'm ever gonna fold here. So I don't even really know RNG or any. I just call pure.
Yeah, this hand's purely weighted, so it's a good call. It's an unfortunate hand to run into.
Yeah, fucking cunt.
That's not what we want to see, but yeah, we want to see like kings or something, but or a bluff.
Okay, so I looked this hand up. I saw that I mix folds to 3-bet here. I did RG it, by the way, so that's good. So I was really happy that a lot of the stuff that I decided to RNG that I thought was close ended up being mixes. That's always a very good sign. I called, but I know it's a mix, or at least that's what I assume now.
That was gonna be my main point. Is that like I just want to make sure that we're not like pure defending all of these spots, especially based on what you said earlier, where it was like, we're going to pure defend all the suited stuff.
Yeah, because if I
was worried about that.
Because if I pure defend like suited stuff versus 4-bets, imagine how I play versus 3-bets, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I saw this spot and I was like, okay, like this hand probably not a pure call either. But that's okay. So go ahead.
Yeah, I flatted here. Actually, I thought this was a really interesting hand, just also as played, but I also just thought about like how often do I just check raise get it in here? Yeah, I felt a bit like playing over multiple streets, which kind of is this hand is a perfect example because I have a bad run out here. How much of this is just a check raise on the flop or the turn? I went check call, check the sides, and it just felt a bit gross.
Sure. Well, we can take a quick look at it. So, so flop, I think call is actually my opinion. We can, because you're interested, we can look this one up.
Yeah.
But I think call is the answer on the flop. I don't think it's a raise very often. So before we look it up, I think that you don't raise much, and I think this is a call with this particular hand. I think this hand's going to end up working out to be mostly call. So I think that's fine. You didn't screw this up yet. Thoughts here?
Yeah, kind of the same thing. Like now, I kind of feel like.
So you don't feel like it's a mix? Is that, or did you just like not know and then call?
I mean, I think this spot is just a severe lack of knowledge in cash games for me. Okay. So I have kind of trouble thinking about a macro strategy. I do think that it's significant that he bets 75% on the flop, because that of course is going to cut down our floats. And how many hands we defend, especially out of position in a 3-bet pot. So I don't think the 3 is necessarily that juicy of a barrel card for them in that sense. But the diamond's pretty good still. But still, you know, the diamond's less good to barrel because he bets 75% on the flop, you know, because he... there should be like less like 1 club hands, or you know, maybe certain 2-spade combinations that won't defend anymore. So I don't know. I just don't feel like this is such a fruity turn to barrel.
Okay. I think it's a decent spot for him to keep going, personally. But I think this hand now, like you unblock. I mean, his bluffs are all going to have like reasonably robust equity. They're all going to be overcard bluffs. Like a large fraction of them will be overcard bluffs. It's unfortunate that we don't block. You know, this is kind of like a damned if you do, damned if you don't spot, where I think he's bluffing with overcards quite a bit, and then like he's value betting with jacks, queens, kings, and aces. So like when you have jack 10 instead of 10-8, for example, you block jacks, but you block, you know, presumably where some of the bluffs are coming from as well. So this is an interesting situation. I think that this is gonna mix to jam here quite a lot. So I do think that this is now like there's 70 big blinds in the middle. If we call here, we're gonna have 60 left. So if we call, we're gonna have if we call, we're gonna have 60 big blinds left, and there's gonna be 100 big blinds in the middle. So at that kind of an SPR, I'm not gonna say the hand is like over, because it's not over, but like at that SPR, you start to see a lot more jamming just because of the the odds that you're getting, and the like the protection, like the small, like the modest protection is actually worth quite a lot of money considering how big the pot's gotten. So as the out of position player here, I do think that there's going to be a lot of jamming. Like that you are correct to look at this and be like, I wonder if there's a lot of jamming now. There is, I would assume. And I think that this hand probably does quite a bit of it. So I might have just slammed it here quite a lot. We get the best river in the deck, and what are you thinking now?
Man, now I just kind of feel like a little bit in between a rock and a hard place because he's never value betting stuff that's worse than mine, right? I mean, everything that was bluffing gets there. I even think that I have some check raises with clubs on the flop. Yeah, I mean,
we don't check raise the flop that aggressively against that bet size that he used.
Okay.
I'm not saying that you don't have some, check raise. It's not like it drops to 0, but your range will be relatively speaking intact. Like you'll have like sets here, and you'll still have you're gonna have a pretty aggressive 4-bet with overpairs, and like even a low check raise percentage might take the overpairs out. But you're gonna have flushes here for sure, like lots of them, and you're going to have boats here. So I just wanted to kind of like have you some understanding about
Yeah, I mean, I figured I might. I don't know if I'm high enough to even consider RNGing it. I do think so because I still also have like 9s, 8s, 7s, 4s, 5s, maybe. Maybe some 6x in there, some a6 suited or some shit. But I also have ace 10, king 10. I have 6s, quads, and then I did think I have a bunch of flushes as well. That's what I kind of said out loud on stream as well, that I still have a bunch of flushes. So I kind of felt like I have enough auto calls, but I wasn't sure if this is all. I mean, I beat bluff, so I guess it's part of my fucking, MDF considerations, but I just thought this was really rough. I mean, because these guys are too good to just think like, oh, worst river in the deck, I fold, but it does tighten up my calling range a bit, right?
Sure. So I just wanted to kind of hear how you think about everything. Like, I wanted to hear what runs through, like that's how teaching works. So again, for the people watching, my job is to try to make implicit, like the stuff that we just think about intuitively, explicit, right? So it's not enough to be able to just play the game. Like I need to be able to hear what he's thinking so that I can try to course correct some of his thought process and see where he just skips over things. So one of the things you just skipped over is, and you never mentioned it at all, which you needed to think about a lot, I think, in this situation. Again, we're going to solve it, so we'll know in a few minutes. You never talked about jamming. And you never talked about how your range looks. Like we haven't actually checked yet. So I was just gonna let you run. But this is a river that's like obviously very interesting. From when you're looking at your hand, you're like, oh wow, this river sucks. But when you're thinking about your range, you called a very large bet on the turn, which means you don't have quote unquote bluffs. I mean, like you didn't like double float. This isn't like, I don't know, this isn't like 1999 poker, or like on high stakes poker GSN or something. You know what I mean? Like we didn't double float like ace jack of diamonds here. You know what I'm saying? So we don't have air on the river after this. Let's go back. After this happens, right? When he does this and we don't fold, our range gets like pretty damn strong. Like our range cleans up. Like we still have some double floats from like 9s and 8s with a club. I'm pointing those hands out because we have those hands, we can donk jam those hands on the river. They're better for doing it. But there's going to be, like, this is a river now where you don't have air anymore as Lex, right? As Lex, we don't have air. We have a pair of 10s sometimes, like case in point, right? We don't have a pair of 6s much just because of the way the pre-flop ranges are shaped. We have some pocket pairs that have a club. And then we have flush draws, which are now flushes. And then we have traps, right? That's pretty much how our range is shaped. Mm-hmm. So now the weakest hands in our range are 9s and 8s with a club and hands like this one, 10-8 of hearts. So there's going to be a shitload of donk jamming.
Wow. Holy fuck.
With this hand class. It's a lot of it's going to be derivative of like 9s with a club or 8s with a club or something. But this hand's probably going to mix to jam a lot. So that's the first part. The second part is like, Well, hopefully I'm not wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. we'll see.
Just even if it doesn't like this hand for it, and it's going to be like, oh, you need to do it with 9s, 8s, 7s with a club. Doesn't matter. Just as a concept, like you said, you pointed out, I completely skipped over it. And just as a concept, I would never have thought about that in cash games. So it's just like, even if it's not a solution for this hand, it's still something that is like a mind eye opener for me.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome. Good. So yeah. So I just want to make sure that we're thinking about our range as we get into situations, right? So so that we know what we've got, we know where we might be at, and we're thinking about converting. We won't want to get married to the fact that we had a bluff catcher, because we do have a bluff catcher, but and bluff catchers check, but you have to think about your range holistically, and this hand is like very convenient to bluff with, I think, at this point. Okay, so then we check, which is not bad. I don't think this is pure bet, but I think that there's going to be some jamming. And the thing that makes this hard now, from my perspective, there are two things. One, we should be jamming a lot. So
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of jamming on the river with like some of the stronger parts of your range, like flushes, for example. And when we check, he's not betting very big. So my assumption is that, like, just based on the way that most people play, you probably pure folded here.
Well, I had a lot of trouble deciding, and that's kind of funny because that means I could put it in the like you say, in the bluffing bucket, because if I think that my hand is so far to the bottom of my range, you know, like how last week with the Queen of Clubs, it was way too high up, so it wasn't even a consideration for clearing MDF. I just need to auto call that part. I thought that this hand was so low that it wasn't even consideration for RNGing because it was just too bad, which is so interesting that could just push it into the bluff bucket. I didn't even think about that. But okay, anyway, I decided to RNG this and just give myself like a much bigger buffer in that sense. So I think that we need to clear, we need to call about 60% versus his bet size. Sorry, that's like 37%. And I decided, well, I rolled it and I decided, to just give myself like 10% points because it's so low in there. And then I rolled like an 8 and I folded. But I would.
Yeah, sure. So you rolled this and you rolled super low, so you folded.
Yeah, but I didn't just like think about MDF, so I didn't just take like, so 60 over 160, so
37.5% fold.
Sorry?
37.5%.
Yeah, exactly. But then I figured like, okay, so I have 37.5% fold, but I'm just gonna put RNG on like 60% fold because I'm so low in my range. Like, I don't know. So I kind of got lost there, but I'd be much more in tune to auto fold this just because it just,
Okay, so I mean, the main thing is like once we check, I think a solver is going to call, but I think a solver is going to call because I think your range is going to be in hell because you're going to lead a lot. But I mean, like, I have no idea. This spot's actually, like you said, this spot's pretty interesting. So first of all, like, this is kind of on theme with what we talked about last week. We're seeing larger bets in these 3-bet pots, right? Which last week we spoke about the fact that you were using this like small bet strategy everywhere.
Yeah.
Right. And I was like, you don't want to do that. A big part of why we don't want to do that, just so people are watching, is like, what's the difference? The difference is, if you bet small all the time, you're constantly exposed to being check raised and having to play these huge pots. And because you're so deep, that's actually a really big issue for your medium strength hands when you could have just checked them back. So like there is this, like, these pots play much larger than I think Lex is used to. And I think it's worth pointing out that, like, what, explaining a little bit, like, why is this the case? And so here, like, when your opponent bets large like this, right, there's not that much check raising. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that there's no check raising. But like 10-8 doesn't check raise. Ace-10 is check raising still, but like that's pretty, I'm not gonna say like obvious, but you kind of expected that probably, right? Like the Ace-10 would still, and it's not pure check raise, it still mixes. Jacks, right, which is a hand that I said we wouldn't have much to begin with. And then we're gonna mix it to check raise on the flop. So like it's not a hand we're thinking about much on the river. We check raise, we check raise, we don't even check raise jacks pure, right? Mm-hmm. Now if our opponent bets really small, we're still not check raising that aggressively. The check raising percentage goes up, but it doesn't go up dramatically. It just goes up. And let's go back to, I just kind of think it's important to contrast some of the bet small, bet large for people. I specifically mentioned that we're still going to have our range intact. So what does that mean? Well, here's bottom set. We don't have that as a pure check raise. Here's pocket sixes. That's not pure, that's mostly a call. And here's pocket tens. So, we still have sets. I mean, we still have some of the strongest parts of our range. We can take a quick look at, flush draws. We still have flush draws that check call the flop. I mean, we don't have really, with the exception of A7, we don't have any like purely weighted flush draws. So
yeah, okay.
I do think it's worth just your range was like relatively intact for calling the flop. So you have a low lead percentage. I'm not surprised that there's a modest lead, but I wouldn't lead. I would have checked range personally if I was in this spot. So I didn't touch on it because I wouldn't have done it on a 3. Okay, so your opponent pure barrels over pairs. There's like a bunch of just like high card barreling. King jack, king queen. Ace jack is a hand that I think a lot of people find less intuitive in the barrel category.
Yeah.
So ace jack there is a high frequency barrel. So I think the hand that stands out. Ace queen as a high frequency barrel. So I specifically said that like your opponent's going to have pretty decent equity when he barrels into you on the turn, because we talked about jamming, right? That's one of the reasons why I'm focused on where the bluffs are coming from. I said like the opponent's bluffs are going to have decent equity against you because they're all going to have at least 6 outs, right? They're all going to have overcards. It is true that like these hands barrel as well. It's not like these hands don't barrel. It's just that there's more of these ones, right? Yeah. These are suited, they're mixing, and so like there's just more of this stuff. So I think your opponent bets right around 30. And we can see if there's jamming, right? So I think that's good. So far I don't look stupid. It's nice when I don't look like a total idiot. So turn involves lots of jam. There's more jam than call, which I think is one of the things that stands out to me. Is like, what's my call to shove ratio? And it's biased in favor of jamming, and it's so it's greater than 1-to-1 for shove to call ratio. If we say it the other way, so 10-8, 10-9, a little bit of jack 10, queen 10. So it's interesting here, king 10, ace 10. These are hands that I think people, when they're playing the spot, intuitively they think that they should shove more ace 10. But you look at 10-9 and 10-8, you don't have any overcard protection here. So you think about where your bluffs are coming from, or sorry, where your opponent's bluffs are coming from, or where your opponent's value is coming from. Your opponent's value is coming from like jacks, queens, kings, and aces. Bluffs are coming from overcards. These hands aren't like particularly resilient in like the hero call down. Like if you catch a jack, queen, king, ace, river, these hands are like less resilient. These hands are maybe a little bit more resilient. So maybe there's like a value protection bias towards the check jam. Obviously we have some flush draws that jam here. We can see that flush draws are mixing between calling and jamming. But we still have most of our flush draws at like at least decent weights. They're not just like pure jamming and stripped out. So we're still gonna have flushes when we get to the river. And we can look at some of the weakest hands we would have here. Yeah, we have like 9s, 8s, 7s with a club still, but not at very robust weights, which makes sense, like that these hands heavily fold on the turn. That's going to cause us some problems.
Yeah, just
for bluffing. Go ahead.
Just seeing that those hands are fold just makes me think that 10-8 suited really wants to jam the river, because I thought that we'd have those hands left, 9s, 8s, and 7s.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Okay, so then we called, which wasn't bad. I mean, like it's not like you screwed up because you called, but you definitely could have jammed, and that would have made life easier. Yeah. But we have to call sometimes.
King of clubs.
King of clubs. That's right. Thank you. So before we see this, yeah, I'm expecting a donk jam, just so everyone knows. That was my thesis. Boom.
Wow.
So we donk bet. So we have a 50-50 split on betting versus checking. So we shouldn't, like when we get to the spot, we shouldn't have been much more biased to check rather than bet. But I think that like your thought process was just like, let's check, right? Like we're checking, he's gonna bet, then I gotta deal with this shit show that's gonna happen. And like the reality is like with your range, you're more inclined to bet at the margin, right? At the margin, we're more inclined to bet than check. So it's a very significant strategy here on this river. And there's 10-8, which is mixing, which is cool for me. Again, because I look less stupid. Then there's 10-9. This is kind of my point, right? Like look at this. Like when we have ace queen, what do we have? Clubs, of course. Yeah. When we have ace jack, what do we have? Clubs. So like these are stuff like, let's just go through all the hands in our range, right? So ace 3 is trips, so that doesn't count. Ace 4 is clubs, ace 5 is clubs. So like these hands aren't that interesting. Ace 10 is like, it's a pretty decent hand. We do have king 6 suited. That's fair, but king 6 suited is a pretty decent hand now. Right, it's 2 pair now, so that's not an issue for us on this river. King 10, it's 2 pair now, so that's not an issue for us. So like we've got, as far as weak hands go, we've got this queen 10, jack 10. These hands kind of suck. We have 10-9, 10-8 suited. These hands aren't great either. We can't keep in mind that the 10 of clubs is on the board. So these are all going to be just naked pairs of 10s, because when we have 10-8, 10x suited, you can't beat clubs if 10 of clubs is on the board. We We have 9s and 8s, but these hands aren't really heavily weighted, right? We don't really have these like heavily weighted hands. So we get to this river, and it's like we have a pair of 10s, you know, roughly speaking. Again, this is roughly speaking. Roughly speaking, our range is like a pair of 10s plus. So if you want to bluff the river, it's gonna have to be the pair of 10s.
Yeah.
That was the thinking that got me to my decision, right? The thinking that got me to my decision was like, I'm gonna get here with like 10x plus. I'm gonna have a bunch of flushes. So probably gonna have to do some betting. That's how I thought about it. Because like, look at how your clubs are playing. This is pure jam.
Yeah.
It's not mixing.
Yeah.
So this is why I said like when we check the river, we probably have to call in a solver. You probably don't, for what it's worth. So like you should probably mix the river with the way you played your range, because your range had flushes when you checked, I think, right?
Yeah.
But like when we get here, and we have a flush, they don't check. Like our flushes don't check. You can just see like this. For people, that's right. For people that are just seeing this, green is check, red is bet. I mean, if that was confusing, now you know. So flushes don't check much. This is how the flushes behave. They just bet. And so like once you check the river without flushes, you're probably going to have to call with 10-8 suited, right? But when you played the spot, you had a bunch of flushes, so you probably needed to mix 10-8 suited. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
It just changes the range that I get to the river with, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you check, he jams for like half pot, and because we don't have anything else to call with, you know, we call it 10-8 suited. But again, I wouldn't take this as like an indictment of your decision, because this range doesn't have any flushes when it checks at all. The root of this decision, like that, was the lack of understanding about the donk betting range. This is like whatever, in my opinion, to be honest with you. And just so that we're clear, we're still abiding by MDF. Like our opponent's betting half pot, we fold a third of our range. This drives with exactly like MDF understanding. So we're in our normal world, and that's why we're mixing these pairs of 10s, even though this river is scary as hell.
Yeah.
Cool?
Yeah, 100%. This actually is one of the most insightful cash hands that we've done so far, I think so.
Okay. So this guy is maybe the weaker player at the table?
Yeah. That's why I decided to flat here. I haven't flatting too much from the small. It's something I looked up after my just 50 cents, $1. Somebody in chat pointed out. Looked it up, and it does suck, so I'm going to stop flatting the small blind. For some reason, I had in my head that you could still do that with pairs and some suited stuff. And so anyway, but I mean, even I would have always done this against this player, 3x, you know. Yeah, I mean, again, against somebody that I want to play pots with, I would just flat here. Obviously, it might put me at a little bit of a problem versus the big blind if they're good, and they are usually, but still, I think it's okay as a sort of exploit.
Okay. Yeah, so I don't think that at this stack depth, specifically versus 3x, there's going to be any flatting. So I don't think we want to flat. Now, that being said, obviously we can make exceptions if someone's particularly weak. So it kind of comes down to just how bad this player is playing and like what, you know. Yeah. So this is we're basically in the realm of I can't prove one way or the other if this is good. Right. So versus 3x, assuming that this player is playing well, this hand's pure fold. And then
understood.
You make your own adjustments, like based on how bad he is or whatever, and like I you know, like that's kind of in the wind. I have no opinion about whether or not this is going to be good or bad. At this stack depth, I don't mind mixing this to call because we're shorter. So the deeper we are, the more we're going to want to check raise this set at a higher weight. The shorter the SPR, like the more reasonable it becomes to flat here. But I would still check raise here a lot. But I think like mixing this to call is not, you know, unreasonable.
Yeah, I also thought like, you know, if I check raise against a recreational player, then they're not going to be defending as much as they should with like single spade hands or a hand like Jack 9 of hearts or something, right? So that takes away a lot of the printing that I can do with this hand.
Okay. Yeah, so this again, we're like firmly in. Let's just try to milk this guy territory, and we're not really using.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's more difficult to be analytical about it. But yeah, I personally I would have mixed, but I don't think that. And I think that in this situation you can check raise to smaller sizings because you're short, so you don't have to check raise quite as large, which is helpful. Now I think you're probably check raising because you just think he's going to he might over defend his gut shots and things like that. Yeah. Okay. That's a really pits river.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might block for 10%. You still get value from like all of the like nines through kings region.
That's interesting.
But I wouldn't jam. Yeah, that sucks.
Kind of insane.
So like I said, we're running pretty salty. We're running pretty salty.
I mean, this hand gave me mixed feelings because at the same time I was pretty fucking happy that he checked back an ace, because he still has like missed spade draws. He might spaz all in with, you know, tens, jacks, or whatever. I figured there's still tons of hands that he can turn into a bluff there. I don't really have that much 6x or at all from the small blind, so I don't know. It seems like a sort of like get out of jail free to just shove, you know. I would have called here, by the way, versus him if he shoved the river for that reason.
Yeah, I mean, like he's missing the thin value bets. So although I think this hand probably does mix the river. I mean, like it's difficult at this SPR to know if this hand should like pure jam for him or not. But I think mixing it's not stupid. Yeah, I think calling against him is like somewhat reasonable, to be honest with you. So we open up the queen jack suited, and okay. So the first thing that stands out is we're not just betting like one big blind anymore, right? Like last week we were betting like 1.5 bigs all the time. So I'm happy to see that we're betting large here. I think I remember a hand last week where you overbet the flop.
Yes.
Yeah, this is like the type of board where it's reasonable to do it.
Oh, cool.
So I think that like so like maybe this maybe this could do it.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, well, the nuts isn't possible, but like it's kind of like it could come in. So and then when you think about some of your asymmetric value bets, they're your asymmetric value bets. So for people watching, the value bets we have that the opponents don't have, jacks, right? Jacks is like a hand that like could really like betting, like just going ham here, right? Jacks, queens. So I think that you could see some really large betting on this board texture with the way that your range is shaped and the hands that he's missing that he purely 3-bets. So yeah, so I think that maybe, but I'm glad that we didn't bet 1.5 bigs. That's that's good. I think it's a strong start.
That's a good one to write down, by the way. When the nuts are impossible for the villain on the flop, consider overbetting. That's something that I only think about. I thought about that too much from my own perspective. You know, like the ace jack 10 two-tone boards where I raise from under the gun. I'm like, hey ho, you know.
Sure. Yeah. So like if like I would personally not be overbetting flops if the board was like 10-9-8, for example.
Yeah.
Because then they have queen jack and 7-6, right, and jack 7 suited or whatever. So you start to run into some problems. Where again, like on this board, it's just like it's 10-9 suited. Oh, I guess it's 10-9 against cutoff, not hijack. 10-9's probably a mix. It's gonna be close. Maybe it's in there pure. But regardless, like the nut ratio for this player is quite low on this board texture relative to other ones. So I don't. This player's good. This is a strong player. This is the weak player.
It's the same guy.
Remember, this is the same guy. I was gonna say because this card doesn't involve leading. So like I didn't know who, because he's got 100 bigs now, right? So when he had 60 bigs, it was more obvious that he wasn't very good. But now he's got 100, he looks like everybody else to me. But like when he does this, I'm just like, does this guy suck? Like, is this guy like, who's this guy? Because this is not reasonable. Our range is still fully intact. We haven't done anything to like make this card asymmetrically better for this player than for us. So this shouldn't happen. So when this player does this, I would just mark them as a recreational player normally, because this should be like fairly obvious. This is bad. So he does it, and you're like, okay, whatever. I call. I have queen jack, and then he barrels, and you're just like, okay, call. Like I have queen jack still, and like that seems fine. And he has 9-10. So you're running really salty. Like this is just like pretty fucking annoying, to be honest with you. Like if I was playing, I'd be like, this is like a pain in the ass.
Oh yeah, I'm curious to hear about this one.
Cool. All right. Okay, so what are you thinking? What's going on in your head?
Well, I'm thinking that he's going to have a relatively high c-bet frequency on this board. I kind of wanted to merge my bluffs with where my value bets come from, right? I'm going to check raise. I thought that I was going to check raise ace-x of clubs here at a reasonable margin. So I figured that this kind of sets me up nicely for a check raise, club comes, and then just like pile off.
So first of all,
by the way, sorry, isn't it funny the difference the way I talk about like tournaments and cash games? Now I'm just talking about ramming it in and piling it in and whatever.
Every hand we got to get it in. We got to get stacks in every hand. All right, so So one of the things that you didn't mention, because again, like that's why it's important that for me to let you talk. So maybe some people think I should be saying more or something. I just kind of want to point that out. So you didn't talk about sizing, and you made it really small. Like this is real small, and so like I don't think it registered to you that this was real small. When we make it this small, we are usually using a linear check raising range. So it makes lots of sense, for example, to use this check raise sizing if you're in an MTT and you're playing like button versus big blind at like, I don't know, 30 bigs. You're going to check raise, top pair with no kicker. So on this board, we would check raise like king deuce of hearts. Like that's a mix to check raise. I would mostly call in that situation, but like, king 4, king 5, king 6, king 7, those hands can check raise. No problem. No problemo. Sizing should be small though, because we're not using a polarized check raising range in that situation. Okay. This is like the opposite of that situation. So now we're playing MP versus big blind at 100 BBs, and we should be using a polarized check raising strategy, which generally speaking has the goal of getting the stack in. So like you're gonna have like king 10 when you check raise here, pocket 3s when you check raise here, pocket 10s as a mix when you check raise here, like for preflop, and not really much king queen. Like you're gonna check raise king queen. It does check raise, but it's not like it's pure or anything like that. It's not like every time we have king queen here, we're gonna check raise. I think king queen of spades is probably a high frequency check raise. I think like if you have king queen with the queen of clubs, I would check raise that more. But if I had king queen of hearts here, I wouldn't be like check raise. You know what I mean? Like no. So it's gonna be like a more polarized type of situation. Again, trying to get stacks in, and this doesn't really do that. So I think we want to check raise to like 10 BBs. So this is like real small. So I think this is probably wrong for what it's worth. Like I think that you want to go bigger. So yeah, so that would like the thing that's still like, first of all, I think it's a great check raise, but
okay.
I think it's just way too small.
I mean, 5 of diamonds is great. I think that it creates a lot of auto give ups since it's not a spade, and I think that he still has plenty of floats, gutters, 10x hands. I think that this hand is it's a little bit now. I'd rather have some actual clubs in my hand if I were to be betting. So this might make my bluffing range a bit too big, but I do think that I can still barrel tons of king x that I check raise on the flop. So
you don't check raise that much king x on the. You don't check raise that much king x on the flop.
Oh, I thought I'd mix.
Okay. Yeah, we'll take a look. We'll solve this one. This one's interesting. We'll solve it.
Yeah, because
I think that you should check raise less king x. I think you should check raise bigger. So so like we're in like two different worlds right now. So keep going.
Yeah, I just figured I'd have enough continuation bets on the turn after my flop check raise to offset it with the ace of clubs, jack of diamonds here on the 5 of diamonds. So
okay. I do think this hand mixes to barrel, so I don't think this is pure bet, but I don't think it's pure check either. So I don't have a problem with the fact that you bet. Even with a polarized range with less value bets in it, I think that this is a good card. This is a great card. So you think about what we check raised. Whatever we check raised that was good on the flop is still good now, right? Whatever it was, doesn't matter, right? Whatever we check raised on the flop that was out front, if it was pocket 3s or pocket 10s or king 10 or king 3 suited or whatever it was, it loves this turn. So there's going to be barreling. I mean, like there's going to be lots of it. So no issue. This hand probably mixes. I think you probably have too many ace of clubs hands, even with a gut shot, to check raises to barrel this hand pure. So I would mix. I wouldn't want my range to be too weak, so that's why I would do it. Maybe it's pure bet. I don't know. We'll see in a solver. But I would mix. And the issue though isn't about that at all. Made it too small again, bro.
Fuck.
Made it too small again. So again, when we have king 10, when we have pocket 10s, when we have pocket 3s, when we have king 3 suited, we're trying to get stacks in.
Yeah.
Right? We're trying to get stacks in. So the bet size here is like 20. Your bet's not even like close in terms of sizing choice. Like I would make it like 20, 21, 22, something like that. Like I'm blasting at this turn when I bet.
Yeah, makes sense.
So this is just way too small. So the flop sizing was just like way too small, and the turn sizing is just way too small.
It's kind of funny. I think last week when they were playing against me, when they looked at my c-bet sizes, they were like, lol, MTT donk. And now they're looking at my check raise and continuation bet turn size, and they're like, "Lol, MTT donk."
Sure. Yeah. So in an MTT for what it's worth, it should also be bigger.
Yeah. It's just like
okay, cool.
This is just funny because like we talked about it, right? Like when I mentioned possibly playing high stakes poker, that we would have to start doing 100 big blind work, and you just realize, like, you know, because we study most of what we study is 30 to 50 big blind range, like you mentioned last time. And then now, you know, 100 big blind, it just becomes so much around like getting stacks in and putting bluffs across from that, right? And yeah, it's just something I'm not used to, but it's really good to see that because there's so many MTT spots like this as well, you know, when we start a fucking 2K or something.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. When we're really deep, basically, like you know, you're a lot of a tournament is going to be like 50 bigs or 40 bigs or whatever, and like this is going to be normal. Like this bet sizing is going to be normal because it's going to get stacks in. But like when we start playing deeper, much more often, like the value bets in our range, like the strongest combos, they want to get stacks in the middle, and they're not going to rely on him raising to do it because he's not going to raise much because we check raise the flop and we're barreling down and representing a polarized range. You should expect him to play call fold. So the only way to invest your stack with the strongest parts of your range is to overbet. It's the only way to pull it off. And yeah, so like this is just like, you know, this doesn't really work with the way that we build our check. And our check raising range should be more polarized here. So it's really only those types of hands on the value side. So it shouldn't be like we don't have like king jack or something that we're trying to like thinly get value from. Like that's not how it works. And thoughts here?
I mean, just dust, I think. Like having the ace of clubs in my hand, of course, terrible. The jack of diamonds in my hand now, also not great anymore.
So where do you want to bluff?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I guess it's better to bluff with this hand than two clubs in my hand, so...
yeah, that's fair. I mean, like maybe queen jack of spades though, something like that. You know, like I don't know, this hand's like doesn't seem particularly great. This river's like not a great one to in general. I think the river check was fine, but I just like when you said like, you know, the jack sucks too. I'm like, well, we would have to bluff with something.
Yeah,
so it's not going to be with like we're not going to bluff with like 7-8 of diamonds. You know what I mean? Like that'd be nice if we had it, we'd bluff with it, but we're never going to get here. So yeah, we're gonna have to bluff with something that we hate. Maybe like low end clubs, maybe like 6-7 of clubs, right? 7-8 of clubs, like maybe low end clubs still bluffs, something like that. But this hand is a give up, and so I think that's totally fine. Okay, so let's go ahead and solve this one, just because this one we were really far apart on some of the strat that goes into this. So okay, so we see like a lot of big betting, and again, the reason I'm reinforcing this is only because I want you to see like, look, these spots aren't dominated by like bet a third. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I just want to pound that in because it's really important. So these hands don't have to, you know, like these hands aren't betting, but what they're doing is they're not taking a risk of being check raised when they check, right? So queens, jacks, some of the 10x combos that you think are, you know, that in MTTs might be pure bets. Ace 10, queen 10, jack 10. Even, and then like king X combos with no kicker, right? So like when we check these hands back, we don't have to deal with like flop check raise plus turn barrel, right? And so like we don't have to play these massive 100 BB pots potentially with all of these medium strength hands that can just check at this stack depth. Okay, so he bets. I think he bets. I think he bets actually small, right? Yeah, he actually bets.
This guy's an MTT donk too.
Okay, so we've got a small check raise here to 5 big blinds, and it's never used.
Yeah.
So we could have checked it, right? Because it's important to actually evaluate, because I didn't know if the model is going to even have a small check raise sizing here. So it's great that the model actually has like a big size and a small size. And we can see like, okay, the model's got a big size and a small size. Like what's the preference? It's like go big. Okay. Now I specifically said I wouldn't check raise king queen of hearts much. Like I gave that as an example of a hand I would not check raise. So I mean, like it's a 90% call, but I specifically mentioned king queen of spades being the type of hand that I would check raise more.
Yeah.
And you can see that king queen of spades is like a much higher frequency check raise here. It's a 30% check raise versus a 12% check raise. So just having that extra backdoor flush draw support, you know, it's basically stronger hands, right? Are what check raising here. I mentioned I would check raise like more if I had like king queen with the queen of clubs, for example. You can see that the queen of clubs variation is the highest frequency check raise variation. So there is some check raise from king of hearts, queen of diamonds. There's some, but there's more from the queen of clubs variety, right? So I'm a human, and like I'm going to use some simplifications in certain instances, and so I would personally check raise more with the backdoor flush draw variations, and I wouldn't have been check raising quite as much without them. when we have ace king, we can check raise that. Okay, but we don't have it much. If we have like king jack, for example, we don't really check raise that hand. Right. So like most of our king queen with no backdoor flush draw support calls. Most of our king jack just calls. Our check raising range, king 10, pocket 10s I mentioned, pocket 3s. I mentioned some king 3 suited potentially finding its way in. Yeah, I mean, like, for the most part, I think this kind of looks the way that I was describing it. We have some ace jack, ace of clubs. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. So, like I said, there's nothing wrong with your check raise in and of itself. It's just that you made it too small.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, so we check raise small. We get called. And I specifically mentioned that, you bet like this. And I said like, we got to blast at it, bro.
Yeah.
Like, we got to, we're going to try to get stacks in when we have our good hands. And so, like, so for people watching, like, the lighter the color, the smaller the bet. Okay, so green is check, light pink is small bet, light red is like, medium sized bet, and like if it's like maroon, that means we're going for stacks. So so here we see, like, betting 175% of pot, so damn near 2x pot. That's a really high frequency action. We could see 125% of pot. That's a really high frequency action. We could see anything smaller than that never happens.
Wow.
So like this, this is just kind of theory 101. So I'm not a cash game specialist. I'm actually running really hot today. Everything I said came true, so that's great.
At least one of us is.
Oh, sorry, buddy. But this is the power of the theory of the game. Like, the theory of the game can help you get to playing reasonably well, even if you're not a specialist. So I don't run these sims very often. So like I haven't seen much of this, but like it just makes, if you understand poker theory, then this is just how you would expect it to work. Okay, so I mean, like, I don't know. I think this is like pretty clean. So I mentioned your hand being fine to barrel with. I said I would mix your hand. I don't want to be like, I don't have too many of these types of hands. So these hands are mixing, so that's cool to see. But it's not like it's bad to bet. It's just that you bet too small, right? So like you also knew that betting was good. And you also talked about managing your bluff to value ratio. You mentioned that, right? So you knew all of the, so like you were touching on the ideas around mixing. It's not like me and you are really far apart. It's just that like the sizing choice is specifically the thing that stood out as being something we could improve upon. And we got pretty much like one of the worst rivers, I think. Like when we check raise and barrel, we don't have much 10x. Like this blocks our king 10, it blocks our pocket 10s. So this is like a pretty shit river, to be honest with you. But we don't check range. We check a lot, but we don't check range. So, but ace jack in that context are checks. I mentioned maybe queen jack of spades or something. Queen jack without clubs is kind of my point. So you can see that if you have queen jack with a club, then you check. But if you have queen jack no club, then you bet. Queen jack of hearts and diamonds here are bets. It turns out queen jack of spades is a check. Queen jack of clubs is a more obvious check. I mentioned specifically betting low end clubs. So we see like some of these low end clubs down here. These are pure bets. So like you do have to bet. It's a shitty river, but you still have to bet, right? You still have to bet sometimes. But again, not with this. You bet with quads. You bet with trips if you can have it. We have some low frequency trips showing up. These are just trips.
At least the double pot's all in when it does,
Yeah, and it's like all or nothing. I mean, like there's some blocking too. There's some blocking too, like in this king queen region.
But it's a very natural block induce.
So this was pretty reasonable, and then it gets checked back, and we lose. So so I think that this is a good spot to wrap things up. I would say that as far as from my perspective, thematically, like things that you want to focus on, over defending versus over defending preflop potentially. So over defending versus 3-bets, over defending versus 4-bets. I would just maybe pay attention to some of the fold percentage in some of those instances, because we're using like more linear 3-bet strategies, like from like cutoff versus. So for example, cutoff versus UTG, you don't have a flatting range, so everything that's decent is going to be what you 3-bet. So you've got to be careful about not over defending those types of situations versus the 4-bets. Because I
have a strong
because range. Because the way your range is shaped, like that can be like pretty disastrous. Because of the way the range is shaped, the folds are going to come from pretty strong hands in some instances. So I just want to make sure that you don't over defend versus 4-bets going forward. And I'm not saying you were, but I just want to point that out. Make sure that we're not over defending versus 4-bets. Make sure that we're not over defending versus 3-bets. And then I think that when you're representing, like when we're check raising, Understand that we're representing polarized, like more polarized ranges. We're not check raising very linearly. Check raise sizings are probably going to be biased towards like larger check raise sizings in general. Yeah, so I think that polarizing a little bit more in certain instances. Don't overdo it because, you know, as we just saw, don't overdo it.
Yeah.
Making sure that the turn bet sizing is trying to accomplish our goals, trying to get stacks in, I think is important. And yeah, so those are the two main ones. Don't over defend preflop, and then make sure that we're betting big enough and polarized enough in some of these other instances. So
awesome. All right, bro.
Cool, brother. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thanks everybody that's watching. We do have we ran a boot camp. We cover pre-flop, flop, turn, river in the boot camp. I think it's extraordinary learning tool for people. There's lots of dialogue. A lot of the coaching products, it's like one coach telling you how he plays the game. The boot camp is like a lot of back and forth. You've got high level players where there are multiple players in a lot of the sessions. There's a lot of pushback. And you get to like really good strategies, really sound answers in a lot of situations. It's really well organized. So you guys can check that out on the BBC Poker website. It's one of the newer things we've got on there. And yeah, I really appreciate Lex having me on, and good luck to all of you. Hopefully some of what we talked about today will be helpful for you guys. And yeah, Lex, you're running like shit, so let's just turn this around.
Awesome, dude. You're the best. Talk soon.
All right, man. Speak soon. Thanks, buddy.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.